Story 1. I broke up with my boyfriend because of Temek. Hi everyone. I don't know if I should be writing this here, but I'm desperate. I need to understand if I'm the one seeing this the wrong way or if something is truly broken between us. I'll tell you from the beginning because I feel like I need to get all of this out to see if anyone else can understand how I feel. 2 years ago, I met Miguel, my boyfriend. A mutual friend introduced us. From the very first moment, it was as if the universe had aligned every star for him and me to be together. Miguel was different. He was always one of those sweet and attentive guys. At first, I thought he was too good to be true. Every day, before we were even dating, he found ways to make me feel special. He was the type of person who would send you a message every morning, not out of habit, but because he truly cared that you knew he was thinking of you. He was so thoughtful. I remember one time, when we were just starting to go out, I had a bad day at work. Miguel knew, and instead of just asking me how I was, he came to my house with my favorite food and a small letter that said, "You are not alone." It's little things like that that made me fall deeply in love with him. He made me feel loved in such a genuine way. I had never been someone who asked for much in a relationship, but he gave me so much without me asking. Miguel was my refuge, but now I feel like I've lost him. A few months ago, I started to notice that Miguel was watching videos of someone who called himself El Temek. At first, I didn't think much of it. We all have someone on social media that we follow. If he found motivation in those videos, what could be wrong with that? This creator talks about how men should focus on themselves, on improving in all areas of their lives, on empowering themselves. And yes, in the beginning, it was positive. Miguel started going to the gym, working more on his projects, seeking promotions at work. I was even excited because I felt like he was taking control of his life and his goals. I supported him in everything. I loved seeing how his eyes lit up when he talked about his progress and achievements, but little by little things started to change. At first, I didn't realize it because I was happy for him, but then I started to feel excluded. Miguel stopped being that man who did everything possible to spend time with me. Suddenly, our relationship went from being his priority to being, I don't know, something that only fit into his schedule if there was a space. We spent less time together because the gym is important, or I have to focus on my work. I understand that we all have dreams and goals, but I feel like before I was part of those dreams, and now I'm barely a distraction in his life. Our dates started to be reduced to quick dinners or a coffee during the week, where he would apologize if he had to leave early because he had his gym routine the next day. I missed the nights when we could talk for hours, where he looked at me as if I were the only person in the world. Now he doesn't even listen to me like he used to. He is so focused on his best version that I feel like there is no longer space for us in his life, only for him and his constant self-improvement. Perhaps what hurts me the most is that Miguel no longer seems to be the same man I once knew. At first, he was someone who made me feel that love was something natural, a beautiful part of his life, but now I almost feel that love has become a burden for him. Once I told him that I was feeling a little distant, and he replied with something that left me frozen. "You have to learn to be happy on your own. You can't depend on me for that." Of course, I understand the importance of emotional independence. But what happened to that man who was always there for me, who told me I wasn't alone? Now I feel like I've been left out of his life, like I'm no longer important enough to receive his time and attention. Sometimes I think that maybe I'm being selfish, that I'm the one who should accept this change in him without complaining. Is it natural to have to accept when your partner starts to prioritize their personal life over the relationship? Every time I try to talk about this, he looks at me as if I'm the one who doesn't understand, as if my need to spend time together is a sign of weakness. It makes me feel like a burden to him. Before, when I told him about my fears or insecurities, he would hug me and remind me how important I was to him. Now it's as if those same words, which were once full of love and patience, have been replaced by speeches of, "You must do this for yourself." I feel like I've lost my Miguel, the man who loved me without reservation, the one who didn't need reasons to make me feel special. I don't know if I'm the one who needs to learn to let go of my expectations and adapt to his new way of being, but it's very hard for me to accept that my place in his life is no longer what it once was. I've tried watching some of El Temeka's videos to try to understand what inspires him so much, but honestly, I don't quite get it. I find that a lot of his advice is more focused on teaching men to disconnect emotionally, to stop worrying about others and focus only on their own achievements and their own well-being. And while I can see why that can be motivating for someone who needs a push, I feel like it's pushed Miguel away from me. It's as if he's traded his love and affection for a version of himself that only has room for himself. I would like to know if anyone else has gone through something similar. Am I exaggerating? Am I the one who needs to change and adapt to this new version of Miguel? Or am I wasting my time trying to recover something that no longer exists? I would love to hear your opinions, because I no longer know if I'm the only one who feels this way, or if maybe I'm the one who should learn to let go a little. Thank you for reading. I really needed to get this off my chest. Update. I didn't think my story would receive so much attention. Most of the comments were understanding. Several girls responded saying they went through something similar and that, in their case, things didn't end well. Reading their messages sent a chill down my spine. It hurt to think that maybe Miguel was gone forever and that the relationship that was once so perfect was falling apart. Some recounted how their partners had also become obsessed with these self-help and personal development gurus, and how that had left them in the background until there was nothing left to save. Reading those testimonies left my heart in my fist. Was that the direction Miguel and I were headed? But there were also people who call me selfish. They accused me of being the typical girl who demands all the attention and doesn't want her partner to grow or be independent. That hurt me. I felt like they were judging me without knowing the whole story. I wanted to respond to them, to make them understand that it's not like that I've always given Miguel space to be himself, to do what he likes. I'm not the type of person who suffocates or limits. I just wanted to be part of his life like he was part of mine. But now I feel less and less in his world, as if I'm just passing through. It's not that I don't want him to grow, it's just that it hurts not being able to share those moments with him. Since then, our relationship has only gotten worse. We don't see each other as much as we used to, and when we do, I don't feel the same connection anymore. Miguel is always distracted, as if his mind is somewhere else, in his plans, in his projects, in his physique. He has become such a different person that I barely recognize him. Sometimes I try to remember the Miguel who brought me flowers for no reason, just because he wanted to see me smile. But that Miguel is gone, and in his place now is someone who seems more interested in fulfilling his gym routine than in sharing a night with me. The other day, I learned that El Temic was coming to give a conference in our city. Miguel was thrilled. As soon as he saw the announcement, he started making plans to go. It didn't bother me so much at first. I thought he would go and come back, and everything would stay the same. But then he told me he would have to cancel the dinner we had planned for weeks. It wasn't anything special, just a night together, but it hurt me so much. I reminded him that we had made those plans a long time ago, that he had told me that we would be together that night, and he replied that this was a unique opportunity, something he couldn't miss. That was the last straw for me. I lost my patience and exploded. I told him that I hated El Temic, that I hated the day he started watching his videos, and how little by little it had transformed him into another person. I yelled at him that if he kept acting like this, so distant from me, then there would be no reason for me to be with him. In a fit of frustration and pain, I threatened to stop being intimate with him if he kept treating me like a second priority. Miguel just looked at me with a calmness that made me feel even worse. He didn't even get upset or raise his voice. He replied, "Katia, I'm no longer that man who lets himself be controlled by his impulses. I don't need that validation. I'm at another point in my life now. I have other goals, other interests." I felt like he was telling me that he didn't need me anymore. That impulse to want to be with me, for me to be someone important in his life, had dissipated. I was speechless, hurt, and confused. Shortly after, Miguel started a new business, and it's starting to go well for him. Before, I would have felt proud and happy for him, but now I can't help but feel a mixture of sadness and anger. It's as if every step forward in his life pushes him further away from me, as if his success and his happiness don't include me. I feel selfish thinking about it, but I miss that Miguel who would rush to see me after getting off work. I miss his hugs, his details, that feeling that he was always there for me. I feel like now he's only interested in growing, earning more, being stronger, more successful. And me? Where do I fit in all of this? I know that what he feels must be gratifying for him, and I don't want to take that away from him. But it hurts so much to feel like I'm no longer part of that gratification, that his life is moving towards a path where I no longer fit. Today I come back here because I need to hear your opinions, especially those of you who told me that you went through something similar. What did you do? Did you try to fight? Did you let him go? I feel like I'm at a crossroads, where if I don't do something, I'm going to lose him completely. Update. I'm back here because I feel like I have no one else to tell this to. The last few months have been emotional chaos. I read some of the advice you gave me and decided to put one idea into practice. Distance myself a little from Miguel to see if he reacted. Some girls told me that it worked for them, that their partners came looking for them when they saw that they were more focused on themselves. I'm not going to lie, my motivation for doing it wasn't pure. I didn't do it to improve myself or because I really wanted to focus on me. I just wanted to make him jealous. I wanted Miguel to feel like he was losing me, to realize what he was risking. So I started going to the gym, something Miguel had always tried to encourage me to do, but which I had never considered necessary. He told me it was good for my health and to improve my confidence, but I always thought I was fine as I was. I was doing it just so he would notice, so he would feel like I was also improving and taking control of my life. All I wanted was for Miguel to look at me again with the eyes he used to have, as if I were the only important person in his life. However, my plan didn't work as expected. When he found out that I had started going to the gym, Miguel, instead of reacting with jealousy or concern, congratulated me. He even told me he was proud of me and that it was an excellent decision. He suggested we go together so he could help me with some routines, and for a moment I felt happy thinking that this would bring us closer. However, I decided to decline his offer and pretended that I preferred to go alone. I thought it would be better to play hard to get, let him know that I didn't need his help. I started going to a gym near my house. At first I was excited by the idea that Miguel would see me interested in something other than him. But the truth is I hated going. I felt like I didn't need it, that I wasn't there for myself. I'd go, do some machines, walk on the treadmill, and get bored. I didn't enjoy it at all, and everything felt forced. Then I had another idea. I realized that there was a guy at the gym who looked at me every time I went. At first I didn't pay attention to him, but then I thought that maybe I could use that to make Miguel jealous. I didn't want anything with that guy. My heart still belonged to Miguel, but I was so desperate that I convinced myself that this could be a last resort. I started exchanging smiles with the guy, even though I wasn't interested at all. Sometimes I pretended to be busy texting him when I was with Miguel, hoping he would notice and feel annoyed. But none of this worked. Miguel seemed unfazed. Every time we saw each other, he would just tell me how good I looked or how proud he was that I was doing things for myself. There wasn't a single sign of jealousy, not a single reaction. It was as if everything I did to get his attention only made him stay focused on his own goals. Meanwhile, his business was doing better and better, and as if that weren't enough, in his free time he started working as a gym instructor. Do you realize? We didn't even have time for ourselves anymore, because he was so busy with his business and the gym. I feel like the more his life grows, the less space there is for me in it. There came a time when I felt like I had lost control. Miguel was so far away. Nothing I did seemed to affect him. So I decided to do something risky, even though deep down I knew it was a bad idea. I asked a friend to pretend to be the guy from the gym and send him a message implying that there was something between us. I told myself that this would make him react, that he would finally realize that if he didn't pay attention to me, he could lose me. It was a desperate idea, I know, but at that moment I didn't see any other way out. The message was simple, something that suggested we were talking and that there was some complicity between us. My friend sent the message to Miguel, and I waited for a strong reaction. I wanted him to feel that he had to fight for me, that he had to make an effort to keep me in his life. But what happened next was the opposite of what I expected. Miguel called me that same night and told me he needed to talk to me. I was nervous, but also excited, because I thought he was finally going to show that he cared, that he was going to fight for us. When he arrived at my house, I looked into his eyes and saw something that broke my heart: calmness. There was no anger, no reproach. He just looked at me with an expression that seemed almost compassionate and told me that he appreciated everything we had experienced together, but that he couldn't be with someone who resorted to that kind of thing. He told me that he needed to be in a relationship based on trust, on honesty, and that what I had done was a sign that there was none of that left between us. It was as if the ground disappeared beneath my feet. I told him that I loved him, that I did everything because I felt insecure and desperate, that I just wanted to get back the Miguel who made me feel important, who loved me as if I were his world. But he just smiled sadly and said he couldn't go on like this. He told me that he understood my pain, but that he couldn't be in a relationship where tricks and manipulations were used to get his attention. And so, without raising his voice, without fighting, without even a flicker of anger, Miguel ended our relationship. He hugged me one last time and told me that he hoped I would find the peace I was looking for, but that he had to move on, and he left, leaving me alone with a guilt that crushes my chest and a sadness that I feel will never disappear. Now I'm here writing this and wishing someone could give me an answer, some comfort. What have I done? How could I have come to this? I wanted so much for Miguel to look at me again, to see me as before, that I resorted to something so low and desperate. Now I've lost him, and I don't even have the chance to fix it. It hurts so much to know that maybe if I had been honest and told him about my insecurities from the beginning, things would have been different. Miguel left, and now I realize that all those strategies to make him jealous, to make him react, only pushed me further away from him. I realized too late that love is not built by manipulating or demanding attention. Maybe if I had given him the support he needed, if I had learned to accept that he was growing, things would have been different. But now it's too late. I wish someone would tell me that there is something I can do to fix this, to recover what I lost, because now I see everything so clearly, but I have nothing left. Update. Several months have passed since I last wrote here, and I've returned because I feel the need to share this final chapter of my story. If anyone ever reads all of this, perhaps they can learn something from my mistakes, or at least find comfort in knowing that even the deepest wounds can heal over time. After Miguel broke up with me, I felt like my world was falling apart. I never stopped loving him, not a single night. There were so many nights I cried myself to sleep thinking about how foolish I had been and the opportunities one had ruined because of my insecurities and my tantrums. It took a lot for me to accept that I had destroyed a relationship that I valued so much. I felt like my heart was broken into 1,000 pieces and I could never pick them all up. However, over time I began to remember something Miguel told me the day he broke up with me, that he hoped I could find the peace I was looking for. At first those words seemed empty to me, but as the days went by I began to reflect on them. I realized that, deep down, Miguel was right. My obsession with being the center of his life and my fear of losing him were symptoms of an insecurity that only I could resolve. I was so focused on my own needs and on receiving attention that I forgot that relationships also require space, trust, and individual growth. Little by little, and with a lot of effort, I began to change my perspective and focus on myself. I stopped going to the gym just to create drama for Miguel and started going because I understood that doing so was good for me, for my body and my mind. It wasn't easy, because deep down I still wanted him to be proud of me. But every time I found myself thinking about that, I reminded myself that this process had to be for me, not for someone else. I started to occupy my time with other things too. I went back to my hobbies, the ones I had put aside because I just wanted to spend time with Miguel. I started reading again, writing, and even started taking cooking classes, something I had always wanted to do but never dared to, because, to be honest, I didn't feel like I had the patience before. I also started meditating and practicing breathing exercises. At first I felt ridiculous, but over time I realized how much these practices helped me calm my mind and find the balance I so desperately needed. And yes, it was a long road, I'm not going to lie. There were days when I felt better, and others when I fell back into that hole of sadness and regret. But instead of punishing myself, I learned to be compassionate with myself, to forgive myself, and to see my mistakes as learning opportunities instead of chains that tied me to the past. I realized that all those tantrums and outbursts I had were nothing more than signs that I wasn't ready to love someone, because I didn't even love myself. Over time, my friends and family also noticed a change in me. I stopped desperately seeking validation from others and learned to be okay with who I am. I learned to value my own space and to give myself the respect I demanded from others. And little by little, with each small step, I built a new version of myself, a version that I am now proud of. A couple of weeks ago, I felt it was time to close this chapter of my life the right way. I felt that I had to apologize to Miguel, not to try to get him back, but because I needed to free myself from that weight and acknowledge everything I had learned thanks to him. So I contacted him and asked him to meet me to talk, without expecting him to say yes. To my surprise, he accepted. Miguel has grown so much since the last time I saw him. Those who have been reading me are probably wondering what happened to him. Well, his Mexican food business is booming. It has achieved such popularity in our city that I sometimes see his restaurant on social media. He also continues to be a gym instructor and has started giving online advice on physical training. Seeing him so focused and fulfilled made me realize how much he had changed since the Miguel I met a few years ago. And far from feeling envy or resentment, all I could feel was admiration and pride. The day we met, I was nervous, but also determined. We met at a coffee shop, and when I saw him walk in, I was struck by how calm and serene he looked. He seemed truly happy and at peace. We sat down, and after a few minutes of casual conversation, I finally apologized. I told him how sorry I was for demanding so much from him, for trying to hold him back with manipulative methods, and for being so selfish. I confessed that I was aware of my mistakes, and that, although nothing I could say could undo the past, I needed him to know that I deeply regretted it. I also told him about my process, about how I had learned to value myself and work on my inner peace, and how his words had helped me realize many things about myself. Miguel listened to me calmly, and then thanked me for having the courage to apologize. He told me that he was happy that I had found the peace I was looking for, and that although he also regretted that things hadn't worked out between us, he was sure that we had both learned something valuable from that experience. In the end, we said goodbye as friends, and although I know we will never be together again, I feel calm and happy that he is well. And now, as I write this, I feel at peace. I have nothing left but to thank Miguel for everything he taught me, even when I wasn't able to see it. I learned that a relationship is not about being the center of someone else's life, but about building something together without losing our individuality. I learned that true love involves respect, support, and freedom for both to grow. To all those people who have been following me, I want to say that if you are going through something similar, remember that no relationship is worth it if it is not built on mutual trust and respect. Don't try to hold someone back with manipulation or jealousy. Those feelings only reflect our own insecurities. Before looking for love in someone else, we must find it within ourselves. Today, after months of self-discovery and growth, I can say that I am well. Not perfect or completely cured of my insecurities, but at peace with myself. Miguel is still someone special to me, and although we are no longer together, I am proud of his success and all that he has achieved. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey and for your advice. This will be my last entry here. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go and learning to be at peace with oneself. Story 2. I left my girlfriend because she became a high-value woman, but now she regrets it. Hi, Reddit. I don't usually post this kind of thing, but honestly, I don't know what to think anymore, and I need to vent to someone who might have gone through the same thing. My name is Roel. I'm 27 years old, and I've been with my girlfriend, Monica, for almost 4 years. I love her, or at least I love the person she was for a long time, but lately, I feel like she's becoming someone completely different, and it all seems to have started when she began consuming a certain type of content on social media. I'm talking about those TikTok, Reels, or even YouTube accounts that talk about high-value women. You probably know what I mean. Accounts that constantly repeat phrases like, a high-value woman doesn't chase, she attracts. If he doesn't give you everything, find someone who will. Don't cook, don't clean, don't give anything if you're not receiving the maximum. You're not here to build with anyone, you're here to be kept. At first, I thought it was innocent, even a little funny. I thought it was a passing fad. I even thought it was good that she wanted to work on her self-esteem. I have no problem with my partner valuing herself, having standards, and wanting to feel special. In fact, I've always tried to make her feel that way. I've put a lot of effort into this relationship, not only financially but emotionally and mentally. But since she started following these accounts, Monica has changed. She no longer talks about her goals like she used to. Before, she dreamed of having her own design studio, of growing professionally, of traveling with me to different places. Now her conversations revolve around what she deserves, what I should give her, and the minimum acceptable for a woman of her caliber. It's not that she doesn't have the right to have expectations, don't get me wrong, but I feel like now she only sees me as a provider, an evaluator of merits, a kind of judge to whom she has to prove that she's worth enough for me to give her more, or, even worse, as if I have to prove to her that I'm worthy of staying by her side. What used to be us has now become, I deserve, or you should. We no longer talk about how to grow together, but about what she's not willing to tolerate or the things I should be doing if I really loved her. I'm not lying. I've come to feel like I'm in a constant job interview. If I make a mistake, I notice it on her face. If I don't react as some influencer said a high-value man should react, then I'm part of the problem. For example, the other day I came home from work quite exhausted, and all I wanted was to sit with her, hug her, and have dinner together. I said, "Shall we order something or cook together?" And her response was, "A high-value woman doesn't cook for a man who isn't surprising her." She said it with a smile, as if it were a joke, but it wasn't a joke, not anymore. These kinds of comments are becoming more and more frequent, and honestly, I don't know if I'm being manipulated, tested, or simply being pushed into a transactional relationship. And this goes beyond the comments, it's her whole attitude. She's colder, more calculating. She analyzes me all the time, as if she's no longer enjoying the relationship but evaluating it with a magnifying glass, almost as if she wants me to slip up on something to justify leaving. The hardest part of all this is that I really love her. I met her as a warm, simple person, full of ideas, with whom I could talk for hours about anything, but since she started with this content, there's a kind of distance, a new coldness, as if I'm no longer enough, as if she's preparing to change her life, but without me in it. And the worst part is that I feel guilty for feeling this way. I feel like if I say this out loud, I sound like a chauvinist, as if I don't accept that she wants to improve her life or aspire to more. But it's not about that. It's about the fact that I feel like I'm losing my girlfriend, and the one who is appearing in her place is someone who sees love as a list of things she has to receive, not as something that is built. She no longer wants to make long-term plans. She no longer wants to talk about what we'll do next year. She only talks about the present, about what she's not willing to do anymore, about what she won't tolerate, about what she's entitled to. Don't get me wrong. I always wanted her to value herself, but this isn't self-love. It's pride. It's ego. It's a learned coldness disguised as empowerment. She's not building a better version of herself. She's demolishing everything we built together to adopt a personality that doesn't belong to her. Or at least that's how I feel. And now, Reddit, I ask you, has this really happened to any of you? That your girlfriend starts consuming this type of content and changes radically? How did you handle it? Do I talk to her directly? Do I tell her that this is affecting me? I've tried to tell her that I feel her distant, that I've missed the way we used to treat each other, that I miss our deep conversations without them being about what I should be doing, but she always answers me with prefabricated phrases like, "It's just that you don't want me to grow. What's happening is that I'm no longer your servant. You're scared that I'll realize my worth." And no, I'm not scared that she'll realize her worth. I'm scared that she'll lose herself looking for one she doesn't need to prove to anyone. I'm scared that one day she'll look in the mirror and not recognize herself. I'm scared that all this will end, not because we didn't love each other, but because she confused self-love with disguised pride. I don't want to lose her, but I also don't want to continue feeling like a to-do list that is never fully completed. Thank you for reading. Any sincere advice is welcome. Update. I didn't think so many people would read my first post, let alone so many would respond with similar stories, opinions, and advice. The first thing I want to say is thank you, seriously. It helped me a lot to read your points of view, especially because I felt like a crazy person, as if I were the only one who was seeing something strange in all of this. There were mainly two types of comments: those who told me that this is a giant red flag, that I should run while I can, and those who recommended talking to her, opening my heart to her, and seeing if there was room for understanding. And I decided to follow the second piece of advice. I wanted to try. I didn't want to make an impulsive decision or act out of anger or frustration. I wanted to look Monica in the eyes and sincerely tell her how all of this was making me feel. I wanted to save whatever was left. So one night after dinner, I asked her to talk without filters. I told her I needed to tell her something important. She immediately became serious, as if preparing for an attack, which already left me with a strange feeling. I told her it wasn't a reproach, that I just needed to open up to her, and I spoke. I told her that I loved her, that I admired her a lot, and that it never bothered me that she wanted to grow, improve, or have standards. But I also confessed that for some time I had felt that everything had changed. I told her how I no longer felt like we were on a team, how many of her phrases and attitudes made me feel evaluated, as if I were never enough. I told her that I missed our judgment-free talks, our common goals, and that complicity we used to have. And she listened to me. That was the good thing. She let me talk. She didn't interrupt me, at least not at first. But when I finished, her answer left me frozen. First, she was silent, and then she told me with an almost rehearsed calmness, "It's just that I'm not the same anymore. I've evolved." I realized that I was giving too much for so little. Before, I confused love with sacrifice. Now I'm clear that if a man loves me, he has to invest in me. And if you don't want to be that kind of man, that's fine. But I'm not going to back down on my path. I was in shock. I told her that sounded more like a transaction than a relationship, that loving isn't just receiving, but giving too. And very calmly she said to me, "Give, yes, but give when I'm given enough, because if I give myself, I burn myself out, and I'm not here to burn myself out for any man." And that's when I felt a strange click in my head, as if something broke a little. It's not that I didn't understand her point. I don't want her to burn out for me. I don't want her to annul herself or be someone she's not. But I also don't want to be with someone who sees every gesture of affection as an investment with an expected return. Since when is being in a relationship a kind of chess game where you have to move strategic pieces so as not to lose value? Since that conversation, I've been in an emotional whirlwind. She didn't yell. She wasn't rude. She didn't attack me. But her coldness left me more devastated than a shouting match. She made it clear to me that she wasn't going to change, that she was convinced of this new role she had taken on, and that if I didn't accept it, the problem was mine. And that's what hurts me the most, feeling as if I were crazy for wanting a more emotional, more authentic, less calculated relationship, as if that were now seen as weakness or as being less of a man. Since that night, everything changed. She continues with her routine, with her cell phone full of videos and phrases that she repeats as if they were verses. I don't know if she realizes that I'm shutting down. Maybe she sees it, but she doesn't care, or worse, maybe she thinks it's part of the process, like a kind of filter to see if I'm enough. But the truth is, I'm tired, very tired. Tired of having to measure myself, of thinking twice about every word so that it's not interpreted as an attack on her empowerment. Tired of feeling like I have to constantly prove to her that I'm worth it. Tired of seeing how the woman I met gradually disappears and that she believes that is evolution. I don't know what to do. I haven't left her yet. I'm still here, but something inside me is no longer fully there, and that's what terrifies me. I'm terrified of staying for the love of the memory, for nostalgia, for fear, and I'm also angry because I loved her as she was. I never asked her to be less. But now I'm being asked to be someone else or to accept something that doesn't make me happy anymore. I write this with my heart in my hand. Is this what they call growing as a couple? Or are we simply taking different paths, even though nobody wants to say it out loud? I don't know how much longer I'll be able to handle this, but I needed to write it again because I'm starting to get tired and I don't know if the love I feel is enough. Thanks for reading again. Update. I want to give you one last update. I didn't think writing this would hurt so much, but it's also a small respite. I guess deep down I already knew this moment was coming. I was feeling it, I was fearing it, but it still hits hard. After my last post, the days were a mix of silent tension and looks that no longer said anything. We were still together technically, but the affection was in a coma. She continued with her routine of high-value woman content, sharing phrases in her stories like, "If he doesn't give you, he doesn't deserve you," and "Never fall more in love with a man than with yourself." And I continued floating in the relationship like a spectator, waiting, foolishly, for something to make her go back to who she was, but she didn't. And then something happened that finally broke me. I was fired. Yes, after almost 3 years at my job, where I was always punctual, responsible, proactive, they decided to downsize, and it was my turn. It wasn't personal, I know that. They compensated me and everything. But it was still a hard blow, not only because of the economic aspect, but also because of the feeling of losing a part of your stability, of your routine, of what gave you a certain sense of control. I went home that day feeling like a failure. I tried to take a deep breath, do the math, think about what to do next. I already had ideas. I knew I could get something else sooner rather than later, but it wasn't the time to think with a cool head. I just needed a hug. And that's where she comes in. As soon as I arrived, it showed on my face that something was wrong. I told her I got fired. And do you know what her reaction was? It wasn't, "Are you okay?" or "How do you feel?" or even "I'm sorry." No, the first thing she said to me was, "Well, then you should get your act together and look for something quickly. You can't afford not to provide. I need someone who has vision. I can't carry someone who's going down a level." I just stared at her. It hurt so much, as if a part of me detached from my body and fell to the floor. I said, "Is that all you have to say to me?" And her response was, "Roll, you're the man. You can't come to me with drama. I'm already focused on growing. and I need someone who's at my level. I can't carry someone who's going down a level. I laughed, but a bitter laugh, because I realized that it wasn't even about me. It was about her new character, the one with high demands, the one of I deserve the maximum or nothing. And that's when I said it. I didn't yell it. I didn't make a drama. I just looked at her with all the disappointment in the world and said, "That's it. I don't want this. I don't want to be with someone who only wants me when I'm on top. I was with you through everything, and you can't even give me a word of encouragement when I need it most." We broke up, and you know what she did? Nothing. Not a tear, not a why, not a wait. She just remained silent, nodded her head, and said, "Okay, you know best." And she went to the room. I stayed there in the living room feeling like a stage had closed forever. And yes, at first it hurt. It hurt to think that someone I gave so much to, someone I truly loved, wouldn't even flinch when I told her it was over. But as the hours passed, something strange happened. I started to feel lighter, as if I had taken a sack off my back, as if I could finally breathe without measuring every word, without calculating whether what I was doing was enough, as if I could finally be myself without it feeling like a mistake. I'm not going to lie, the first few days I felt empty. I wondered if I did the right thing. I wondered if I should try harder. But then I remembered her face, her words, her coldness, and I understood that I was no longer her partner. I was a provider with an expiration date. And here I am now, without a job at the moment, without a girlfriend by choice, but with more clarity than ever. Also, being honest, I'm saving a fortune, because yes, she had expensive tastes, eating out, little details, gifts, because I'm a queen, and I didn't mind giving. But in the end, it was never enough. I'm starting over, more broken maybe, but also more real, with less noise in my head, and with the promise that the next time I love, it will be someone who understands that a person's worth is not measured by their salary, but by how they are when you need them most. Thanks for reading. And if you're going through something similar, I'll just tell you this. You're not crazy for wanting something emotional, authentic, and reciprocal. And if they call you weak for that, maybe it's not weakness, maybe it's humanity. See you Reddit. Update. It's been 3 months since my last post, and honestly, I didn't expect to write here again. I thought that story was behind me, but as often happens, life had one last scene prepared. Today I want to tell you something that left me with a mix of feelings: pride, sadness, relief, and above all, peace. After that breakup, the hardest I've ever had, I focused on myself. It wasn't easy. At first, I was broken, but over time things started to fall into place. I got a new job, better paid, with a much healthier environment. I started exercising again, picked up hobbies I had left behind, and reconnected with friends I hadn't seen for years. And when I least expected it, there she was, the high-value woman, messaging me. First, it was a simple hi. Then came, "Can we talk? I've been thinking about you. I'm so sorry about what happened." I ignored her for weeks, not out of spite, but because I honestly had nothing left to say. I had already grieved, and I didn't want to reopen wounds that took so much to close. But one day she sent me a different message. "I know I failed you. I just asked for one date, just one, to tell you everything I didn't know how to tell you before." And something in me said, okay, not to give her another chance, but to close everything with real words, face to face. We met at a cafe. She arrived first, dressed as always, impeccable, confident, but this time with a different look. It wasn't arrogance, it was discomfort, it was guilt. I sat across from her and gave her a small smile. She took a deep breath. "Roll, thank you for coming. I'm listening." There were a few seconds of silence, and then she began. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, about how I treated you, about what I said when you needed support the most. It's hard for me to forgive myself for that." I nodded without saying anything. "I know I disappointed you. I got carried away by that garbage content I was watching. I thought I was superior. I thought I had the right to demand things from you without giving anything in return. And when you told me about your job, instead of hugging you, I pressured you. It hurts me so much to have been like that." "You were," I replied. She looked down, and for the first time in a long time, she seemed fragile, human. "You don't know how much I've regretted it. I've tried to leave you alone, but I swear there are nights when I wake up wishing everything had been different, that I had taken care of you, that I had been your partner instead of your judge." She took a breath. "I'm working on myself. I stopped watching that kind of content. I'm going to therapy, and I'm not looking for you to get back together. I'm looking for you because I failed you, and it hurts me not to have loved you the way you deserved. I was quiet for a moment, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to really feel if anything inside me still wanted to go back, and the truth is, it didn't. Monica, I said, I appreciate you coming to tell me this. I really do, but you're too late. Not because there's someone else, but because I'm not the same as before. I learned to love myself, to value peace more than drama, and with you, I don't feel any of that anymore. She opened her eyes in surprise. Maybe she expected me to say, I miss you too, but I didn't because it would be a lie. You had the opportunity to walk with me even in the storm, and you preferred to judge me for getting wet. And now that the sun is shining, you want to come back to my shadow, but there's no room for anyone who didn't know how to be there on my cloudy days. She broke down, covered her face with her hands, and cried silently. I'm so sorry, she murmured. I felt it too, but it's over now, and out of respect for myself, I need you to leave me alone. I got up, left her a napkin, and walked away without looking back. Walking down the street, I felt a tear fall, not for her, but for the boy I was, the one who endured so much, who waited for crumbs, who was infatuated with someone who was no longer there. Today I'm better, not perfect, but better, free, calm, and on my way. Thanks for reading, Reddit, and thanks for accompanying me on this story that, although it hurts, helped me find myself again. Story 3. My girlfriend's feminist friend ruined our relationship. Hi, Reddit. I don't usually make these kinds of posts, but the truth is I need to vent and maybe get some perspective that will help me handle the situation. My name is Abraham. I'm 24 years old. I'm a pretty calm and relaxed guy, and I've been in a wonderful relationship for the last 8 months with my girlfriend Myra, or at least it was until recently. Before going into detail about what's happening, I want to give you some context. I met Myra in a first aid course I attended about 8 months ago. The truth is I only went because my university required it, not because I was really interested in the subject. However, it was one of the best unintentional decisions I ever made, because that's where I met Myra. From the first day we spoke, we connected in an incredible way. We realized we share many common interests, especially our love for comics. We spent hours talking about our favorite stories and characters, exchanging recommendations, and even debating which is the best Batman story arc. She says The Long Halloween. I prefer Hush. Our relationship has been beautiful. We understand each other, we support each other, and, most importantly, we respect each other. Or at least it was until Carla appeared. Carla is a girl Myra met about a month ago. Apparently, they became friends at a university conference on women's rights. So far so good. I have no problem with my girlfriend making new friends. In fact, I like that she has a wide social circle and that she gets to know different perspectives, but Carla is different. From the first moment I met her, I realized her attitude was hostile. The first time I saw her was in a coffee shop. Myra had invited me to join her for a meeting with Carla because she wanted us to meet. I accepted without any problem. However, the conversation with Carla was awkward from the beginning. She greeted me curtly, as if she didn't want to interact with me. Then, every time I spoke, she made strange and inappropriate comments. At one point, when I mentioned that Myra and I had been watching a series together, Carla blurted out something like, "Sure, because I'm sure he's the one who chooses what to watch, right?" A classic of the patriarchy. I laughed thinking it was a joke, but she looked at me seriously and kept talking about how men control everything, even their partner's entertainment choices. I tried to explain that Myra and I decide together what to watch and that, in fact, she is the one who usually chooses, but it seemed that Carla had already made her judgment about me. Since that day, I have noticed that Myra has changed a bit. She started repeating some of the phrases Carla uses frequently, such as "men always think they are right," or "machismo is in every aspect of society." Don't get me wrong. I have no problem with Myra having her own opinion or wanting to learn more about certain issues, but I feel like she's trying to manipulate her, making her see our relationship as something it's not. For example, a few days ago, Myra told me that Carla had pointed out to her that, when we go out to dinner, I usually pay the bill. Myra asked me if I expected her to never pay or if I did it because I believed it was my duty as a man. I was surprised by the question because I had never thought of it that way. I explained that I pay because I like to treat her, and because I enjoy making her feel special, but that if at any time she wants to pay or split the bill, I have no problem with that. She seemed to understand, but I noticed she was thoughtful. Another incident occurred when Myra and I were planning a weekend trip. We had always talked about taking a trip together, and finally, we found the opportunity. However, when I told Myra that I had booked a cabin in the mountains, her reaction was not what I expected. She told me that Carla had mentioned that men always make the important decisions and that she should have more say in those things. I was confused because, actually, I had chosen the cabin because it was a place that Myra had mentioned several times that she would like to visit. I reminded her of this, and she seemed to calm down. But again, I felt that she was questioning our relationship in a way she hadn't before. The last straw occurred a couple of days ago. Myra and I were at her apartment enjoying a quiet evening. We were watching a movie when her cell phone rang. It was a message from Carla. After reading it, Myra paused the movie and looked at me strangely. I asked her what was wrong, and she told me that Carla had sent her an article about how to identify a relationship with unequal power dynamics, and that she wanted to talk about it with me. At that moment, I felt like I was losing the Myra I knew. I asked her if she really believed that our relationship had that problem, and she said she wasn't sure, but after talking to Carla, she had realized that many things she used to see as normal might not be. I asked her to give me concrete examples, and she mentioned things like I usually drive when we go out, I give her gifts more often than she gives me, and in arguments I usually speak in a calmer tone, which could be a form of emotional manipulation. At that moment, I felt completely bewildered. I have never in my life manipulated Myra or tried to impose myself on her. We have always had a relationship based on respect and communication, but now, because of Carla's influence, she is beginning to see everything in a new light, as if I were the villain in our story. I don't know what to do, Reddit. I love Myra and I want our relationship to remain strong, but I feel like Carla is interfering and sowing ideas that are affecting us. I don't want to forbid her from being friends with whoever she wants, but I don't want to lose the relationship I value so much either. How do I handle this without appearing controlling or insecure? How can I help Myra see that our relationship is not what Carla is making her believe? Any advice would be welcome. I will continue updating if anything else happens. Thanks for reading. Update. Hi everyone. It's Abraham again. First of all, I want to thank everyone who commented on my first post. I received a lot of messages of support, advice, and also criticism. Some comments were from girls saying that this was a made-up story just to discredit feminism, but I want to clarify that it is not. I have always respected the movement, although I do not consider myself an ally nor have I gone to marches. I understand that it seeks positive change in society. My problem is not with feminism, but with people like Carla who, with their radical attitude, end up making people see the movement in a negative way. That being said, I want to tell you what has happened in these weeks, because things have gone from bad to worse. Since I wrote the first post, I have noticed more obvious changes in Myra. She is no longer the same girl I started dating. Carla is still very present in her life, and I think her influence has escalated to worrying levels. Before, Myra and I could talk about anything without any problem, but now it seems that everything I do is wrong. I have tried to stay calm, be patient, and not react negatively, but it is increasingly difficult. One of the biggest issues has been the way I treat her. Since we started dating, I have always had certain gestures with her. They come naturally to me, like opening the car door for her or paying the bill when we go out. I never did it with the intention of belittling her or because I believe she can't do it for herself. I was simply taught to be that way, but in recent weeks this has become a reason for constant fights. She tells me that she doesn't need me to open the door for her, that is machismo disguised as chivalry, and that I am perpetuating gender roles. I tried to explain that I don't do it because I think I'm superior, but because I like to be attentive to her, but she refuses to listen. Now, if I try to do it, she looks at me with an expression of disgust or tells me directly to stop. Another situation that has become unbearable is that she now distrusts me for no reason. A few days ago, we were talking about a classmate from her university who had been bothering her and saying uncomfortable things to her. I told her that if she wanted, I could accompany her when she had to see him so that she would feel safer. She replied that I was acting as if I were her owner and that this was toxic behavior. I tried to explain that it wasn't like that I just wanted to support her, but the argument ended with her telling me that I was probably just like that guy, only she hadn't figured it out yet. It hurt me a lot that she thought that about me. The most critical point came a few days ago, when she suddenly accused me of being unfaithful just because I am a man. Yes, just like you read it. We were at her house watching a movie when, in the middle of the conversation, she said something like, "All men cheat sooner or later. I wouldn't be surprised if you did too, or already have." I laughed a little thinking it was a joke, but when I saw her serious, I knew she was serious. I asked her why she said that, and her answer was that, statistically, men are more unfaithful than women, and that I would surely do the same to her at some point. I tried to calm down and asked her if she really thought I was capable of doing that to her, but she just shrugged and said, "I don't trust men." That broke me. After 8 months together, after everything we've been through, does she really think that about me? Since that day, the relationship has been hanging by a thread. I love her very much, but I don't know what to do anymore. I can't talk to her without everything turning into a problem. Even my friends have noticed that I'm not the same as before, that they see me dull and stressed all the time. One of them told me that I should break up with her before all this affects me more, but it hurts me a lot to even consider it. I love her and I want this to work, but it feels harder and harder every time. Another problem is that Carla has started to directly interfere in our relationship. Mayra tells her everything that happens between us, and then, as if she were her personal counselor, Carla tells her what to do. One day, Mayra told me that she thought I was too traditional and that maybe I needed to deconstruct myself. When I asked her why she said that, she replied that Carla had explained to her that healthy relationships do not have gender roles and that I was still trapped in an old mentality. I wonder if she really believes that, or if she is just repeating what her friend tells her. I feel like I'm losing the girl I fell in love with. I don't know if this has a solution or if it's time to accept that this relationship is going nowhere. Should I keep trying, or should I realize that there is nothing more to do? I appreciate any advice you can give me. I don't want to make a decision that I will regret later. Update. Hi everyone again. After my last post, things seem to have improved. As many of you suggested, I talked seriously with Mayra about how I was feeling about her change in attitude. It was a long conversation in which we touched on several topics related to feminism, her friendship with Carla, and how this was affecting our relationship. To my surprise, Mayra accepted that she had been changing in a somewhat extreme way and promised me that she would try to be more understanding. I, for my part, committed to learning more about the subject, even attending a feminist march with her to better understand the movement from within. I must confess that at first I was afraid. I had seen many videos on social networks where men were frowned upon or even expelled from marches, and I didn't want to end up in an uncomfortable or dangerous situation. However, in the end I decided to go, and, to be honest, I was surprised. The march itself was quite peaceful. There were many women expressing themselves freely, talking about their experiences, and at no time did I feel that I was in danger or out of place, except for one person, Carla. From the moment we arrived, she kept making uncomfortable comments. Things like, men only come to see if they can find a feminist girlfriend to redeem themselves. Or, we should have marches without men. We don't need them here. I tried to ignore her because I didn't want to cause problems, but the worst was when we ran into a group of girls who were sharing their experiences about gender violence. I was paying attention, trying to understand their point of view, when Carla looked at me and said out loud, "You shouldn't be here. This is not for you. Leave before someone thinks you're an infiltrator." Mayra was next to me and said nothing, not a single word. She just looked at me with a look of discomfort. At that moment, I felt that all the effort I had put into trying to understand her point of view was crumbling. I spent the rest of the march in silence, walking next to Mayra, but not really feeling part of what was happening. The following days were even worse. Mayra started behaving strangely again, more distant, more aggressive with me in arguments. Now, every time we talked about any topic related to men and women, it seemed that she already had an argument prepared against me, as if everything I said was wrong just because I was a man. We even got to the point of arguing because she insisted that I should not open the car door for her or do acts of chivalry, because that was macho. Before, that had never been a problem, but now it seemed that everything I did was a source of conflict. I talked to my friends about this, and they all told me the same thing. Leave it alone. This relationship has no future. And honestly, I'm starting to think they're right. I know Mayra is not a bad person, but I feel like she is being manipulated by Carla and that the relationship we had at the beginning no longer exists. It hurts me a lot to say it, But for the first time, I am seriously considering whether it is worth continuing to fight for this relationship or if it is time to walk away. What do you think? Am I exaggerating, or is this really hopeless? Update. Hi again, Reddit. I didn't think I'd be back so soon, but here I am. This is over. We broke up. I want to tell you everything because I know many of you have followed me since the first post and have given me advice, some telling me to leave her already, others to try to talk to her. Well, I tried. I really tried, but the last week was hell. Every day, there was a new argument. I'm not exaggerating when I say that every day something different became a problem. If I talked about something at work, it was a problem. If I mentioned a female colleague, it was a problem. If I watched a series with a female protagonist and said the character was well done, it was a problem because I must have liked her. Everything was a problem. One night we argued because, according to her, all men are unfaithful. I told her that was ridiculous, that I hadn't cheated on her or given her any reason to think I would. Her response was, "You haven't yet, but you will because you're a man and men are like that." I was shocked. I tried to explain to her that that was an absurd generalization, but she just wouldn't listen. Another day the argument was about children. I don't even have plans to have children soon. She asked me if I wanted my last name to be first, and I just said, "It's always like that." She called me macho, said that I wanted to impose my lineage and that children should have their mother's last name first. She told me that if I really loved her, I would understand that the father's last name doesn't have to come first. She got angry and just left. That was the tone of the week. Fight after fight, increasingly exhausting, increasingly frustrating. And I felt that she was no longer the Myra I had fallen in love with. One day, after one of our many fights, I sat in my room thinking about how everything had changed. Before, when we argued about silly things, there was always a way to calm things down, to fix it. And I remembered something. Myra loved sunflowers. She had always loved them. When we started dating, I gave her one, and she told me it was the most beautiful flower in the world. Every time I gave her a sunflower, her face lit up, and, for a moment, everything was perfect. I thought that maybe this could help, that if I reminded her of what we had, what we were before all this, it could work. Maybe seeing a nice gesture would make her think about all the good things between us. So I went to buy a sunflower. I also bought her some chocolates that she liked. I called her and told her I wanted to see her in the park where we used to walk when we started dating. She said yes, so I went with the hope that this could be a new beginning. When she arrived, I saw her differently. She wasn't the same sweet girl anymore. Her expression was serious, almost as if she was ready for another argument. But I tried not to think about that. I took out the sunflower and the chocolates and gave them to her. What happened next shocked me. She looked at the sunflower, and her expression twisted into a mixture of anger and contempt. "What is this?" she asked coldly. "It's a sunflower, your favorite flower," I replied with a weak smile. "And the chocolates? What is this supposed to mean?" Her tone was increasingly aggressive. "It means I want us to remember what we had. I want us to be okay," I said, feeling smaller and smaller under her contemptuous gaze. She took the sunflower and threw it on the ground, then tossed the chocolates aside and crossed her arms. "I don't need you to buy me things. I'm not a child you can calm down with candy and flowers. This is exactly what bothers me about you. Always trying to solve everything with silly gestures instead of accepting that you have macho attitudes." It was at that moment that something in me broke. I remained silent for a few seconds and felt a wave of anger and disappointment run through my body. "You know what? I'm tired," I finally said, my voice firmer than I expected. "I've tried everything. I've listened to you. I've changed things. I've tried to understand you. But this isn't a relationship anymore. It's a constant struggle where I'm always losing. I don't want to go on like this anymore. It's over." Her eyes filled with surprise. For the first time in months, I saw her speechless, but then her face changed. It twisted in despair, and suddenly she grabbed my arm. "No, no, no. Please don't leave me. Forgive me. I didn't mean to do that. I really love you. Please don't leave me." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that at that moment she had realized everything and that she would go back to being the Myra of before. But I was already broken. My heart was already in pieces. I couldn't do it. I released myself from her grip, took a step back, and looked at her sadly. "I'm sorry, Myra, but this is no longer working." I turned around and left. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I knew that if I did, I might falter. I might hesitate, and I couldn't allow myself that. So here I am, single again, but with the peace of mind of knowing that I did everything I could. Thanks for reading me and for advising me. Maybe in the future I'll be back with an update, but for now I need time to heal. Update. It's been almost 2 months since my last update, and I've decided to come back to tell you how things have been. I must admit that I didn't plan to write again, but some recent situations have made me reflect a lot, and I feel the need to share it with you. To begin with, I must say that I no longer recognize Myra. I don't just mean the person she became during our relationship, but what she has been doing since we broke up. At first I thought the hardest thing would be dealing with the sadness and getting used to being alone again. But what I didn't expect was the amount of rumors and stories Myra would start making up about our relationship. Some people I considered mutual friends have told me that Myra is saying that she was the one who left me because I had macho and oppressive ideas. According to her, I was a manipulator and a conservative who didn't let her express herself freely. At first I didn't care much because I thought the people who knew me would know that wasn't true, but over time I noticed that some of my mutual friends started to distance themselves from me. Some stopped responding to my messages. Others greeted me in a cold and distant way. It is clear that the gossip has had an effect. What hurts me the most is that I never wanted this to end badly. While our relationship became unsustainable, I always wanted to remember the good times and move on without resentment. But seeing how Myra is distorting everything that happened makes me think that I really didn't know her as well as I thought. But well, leaving that aside, I want to tell you that my life has improved a lot during this time. I have focused on my career, I have resumed some hobbies that I had put aside, and, most importantly, I have learned a lot about myself. The truth is that being in a relationship where you are constantly criticized for things that used to be normal, you begin to doubt yourself. But now I realize that the problem was never me, but the toxic environment I had gotten myself into. I won't deny that there were days when I wondered if I did the right thing, but every time I think about it, I remember the amount of meaningless arguments, the constant tension of not knowing what was going to upset Myra, and the frustration of seeing everything fall apart no matter how hard I tried. I realized that I wasn't happy, and, as much as it hurt to break up with her, it was the best decision. Now, as a final reflection, I want to say that this experience has taught me a lot about relationships and the importance of maintaining individuality. I believe that in a couple both should grow together, support each other, and improve as people. But when a relationship becomes a constant struggle to prove that you are good according to certain standards imposed by another person, it is no longer love, but a battle for control. So if anyone reading this feels like their relationship is becoming something similar, I just want to tell them to ask themselves if they are really happy, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters. Thanks to everyone who read me and supported me in every post. I really appreciate your advice and words of encouragement. Now I just have to move on and enjoy this new stage of my life. Story 4. My girlfriend said she preferred her deceased boyfriend to me, so I broke up with her. I never thought I'd end up writing something like this on Reddit, but here I am. I've been going over what happened for days, and I need to vent. I don't know if I'm overreacting or if this is really something I should be worried about. I guess you guys can give me your opinion. I'm going to give a little context. I met my girlfriend, Laura, almost 2 years ago. We met in a coffee shop where we were both frequent customers, and after a few casual conversations, we ended up exchanging numbers. Ours wasn't love at first sight, but something that built over time. Laura was funny, intelligent, and very understanding. I fell in love with her for how she saw the world and the way she made me feel. I thought we had something special until reality hit me in the face. From the beginning of our relationship, I knew Laura had lost her previous boyfriend in a car accident. His name was Daniel. I never asked for many details because I didn't want to make her relive her pain, but every now and then she would mention him. At first it didn't bother me. I understood that he had been someone important in her life and that his loss had left a mark on her. But over time I realized that his presence in our relationship was bigger than I had imagined. Sometimes she talked about him at times when it didn't make sense. If we went to a new restaurant, she would say things like, "Daniel would have loved this place." If we watched a movie, she would comment on how he used to say that was his favorite genre. When I went to meet her family, her mother treated me with respect, but I felt that in her eyes there was a weight, as if I were just a shadow of the boy they really wanted there. Once, when we had been dating for 6 months, I asked Laura if she had ever thought about therapy. I didn't mean it in a bad way. I just wanted her to be able to process everything that still seemed to affect her. Her response was that she didn't need it, that talking about Daniel made her feel better. I didn't insist. I told myself that I should be patient, that love involved understanding, and that, over time, our relationship would strengthen. However, what really marked a before and after in all this was something that happened a week ago. We were lying in her bed watching a series when, out of nowhere, she looked at me and said, "If Daniel were alive, I would probably still be with him." I didn't know what to say. I thought that maybe I hadn't heard her right, that I had imagined it. I asked, hoping she would retract it or say it was just a bad joke, but no. She looked at me with the same calmness as always and said, "I don't want you to think that I don't love you, but it's the truth. Daniel and I were perfect for each other. We would never have broken up if it weren't for what happened." I remained silent, processing every word. It hurt me more than I can describe. For almost 2 years, I had been building a relationship with someone who deep down still longed for someone else. I know that no one can control what they feel, but hearing those words from the person you love was devastating. After a moment of silence, I asked, "So, what am I to you? A replacement?" Laura sighed and said, "It's not like that. It's just that he and I had something very strong. But that doesn't mean I don't love you." "But do you love me like him?" I insisted. She didn't answer immediately, and at that moment I knew I would never be enough, not because I wasn't a good boyfriend, but because she had never let go of Daniel. Truly, her relationship with him had been frozen in time, idealized, without the problems or arguments that any normal couple has. And me, I was just the one who came after, the person who accompanied her because life forced her to move on, not because she really wanted to. That conversation has been going around in my head ever since. I don't know what to do. I love her, but it hurts to know that in her heart there is still a space that I will never be able to occupy. Am I overreacting? Should I accept that this is part of her process? I don't want to lose her, but I don't want to be just a shadow in her life either. Update. Well, after my last post, I received an absurd number of comments. Honestly, I knew Reddit could be brutal, but I didn't expect so many responses telling me I'm a simp or a doormat for staying in this relationship. I saw comments that basically said I should have left her the instant she mentioned her ex, as if relationships were as simple as pressing an exit button. I also came across comments that practically treated me as if I had no dignity, as if I were a coward for not sending everything to *****. And realistically, 99% of the people who comment on these things have probably never had a serious relationship in their lives. The closest thing to a girlfriend they've had is their Roblox psychologist. I'm not saying this to insult, but because it's very easy to give blunt advice when you've never been in a similar situation. Now, leaving aside the online relationship philosophers, I know this is more complicated than it seems. I'm not here to justify myself or to say that I have the absolute truth, but I do want to clarify some things. This is not just a matter of wounded pride or competition with a ghost. It's a real relationship with real emotions, and it's much harder to make decisions when you're inside the situation and not seeing it from the sidelines. It's been a few days since that conversation with Laura. To be honest, at first I distanced myself a bit, not because I wanted to punish her, but because I needed space to process it. I didn't stop talking to her completely, but my responses were shorter and, in general, I was less present. I couldn't help it. Her words kept going around in my head, and every time I tried to convince myself that I had misinterpreted what she meant, the feeling of emptiness came back stronger. She noticed, and, eventually, asked me to talk. She looked nervous, as if she knew she had crossed a line. We sat in her living room, and she was the first to speak. She told me that she had been thinking a lot about what she said, and that she realized it sounded horrible, that she hadn't thought it through, that it wasn't her intention to make me feel like I was a plan B, and that she loved me. She said she wasn't with me because she saw me as a replacement, but because she really wanted to be with me. She apologized several times, saying that at the time she didn't realize how what she said would sound, that she didn't express it well, that she never meant to imply that she was with me just because Daniel was gone, that if she were in my place, she would also have been devastated to hear something like that. She assured me that I wasn't a better than nothing, as many in the comments seemed to think. I'm not going to lie, hearing her say that relieved me a bit. But the truth is that this isn't something that's erased with a simple, "I'm sorry," because it's not just about the words she used, but what those words reflect about her feelings. Does she really see me as her partner, or is she still stuck in the past? Can she fully love me if she is still clinging to someone who is no longer here? We've had several discussions about this in the last few days. I tried to explain to her how she made me feel, and, to her credit, it seems like she's getting it. She has told me that she wants to make things right, that she doesn't want me to feel like I'm competing with a ghost, that our love is real, and that she is in this relationship because she chooses me. And I want to believe her. I want to think that her apologies are sincere and that it was just a mistake in the way she expressed herself. But at the same time, I can't help but feel that something still doesn't quite fit. It hasn't been a constant fight, but it is a recurring theme that inevitably continues to weigh on our relationship because it's not just an isolated conversation. Since we've been together, Daniel has always been present in some way. In the comments she makes, in the involuntary comparisons, in the way her family still mentions him when we're together. And while I understand that a loss like that never completely disappears, I don't want to be someone else's shadow. Now I'm at a point where I don't know exactly what to do. Part of me wants to believe that we can overcome this, that with time and communication she will be able to leave the past behind and build something solid with me. But another part of me still feels that this is a sign of something deeper, that no matter how much she loves me, she will never be able to stop seeing Daniel as the love of her life. Am I being naive in thinking that we can get through this, or am I just prolonging the inevitable? I don't want to make a hasty decision, but I don't want to continue in a relationship where I will always feel like I'm in second place. Update. Hi again. Things seem to have improved after our conversations and clarifications. It seemed that we were finally at a point where we could move on without the past getting between us. Laura no longer mentioned Daniel, and, although there were still awkward moments, I thought we were making progress. I told myself that with enough time and patience we could put all this behind us and build something really solid. But then, out of nowhere, everything started to go downhill again. I couldn't say exactly when it changed, but I started to notice that Laura was different. At first they were small things, subtle changes in her behavior. She was more distant, as if she were distracted or her head was somewhere else. And although she stopped talking about Daniel, there was something about her that made me feel that it wasn't because she had gotten over him, but because she was keeping it to herself. The real breaking point came one afternoon when Laura came home with red and watery eyes. As soon as she saw me, she avoided my gaze and went straight to her room without saying a word. I stood there in the living room confused. I tried to process what I had just seen. Had something happened to her at work? Had she had a bad day? I didn't know what to think, but a feeling of unease settled in my chest. I gave her a few minutes to calm down and then went to her room. The door was ajar, and when I peeked in, I saw her sitting on the bed with something in her hands. I got a little closer and then I noticed it. It was a shirt, a man's shirt. It wasn't mine. My stomach instantly sank. I didn't have to ask whose it was because deep down I already knew. Still, the words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. What is that? I asked, trying to control the tone of my voice. Laura looked up, surprised to see me there. Her face was full of tears, and, as soon as she saw that I was looking at the shirt, she clutched it to her chest, as if she was afraid I would take it away. It's Daniel's, she whispered. I felt a lump forming in my throat. I didn't know if I was more angry, confused, or hurt. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Why are you crying like this? I asked, trying not to sound aggressive, although inside I was boiling with frustration. Laura wiped her tears quickly and looked down. I passed by his favorite restaurant, she said, her voice trembling, and I just couldn't help it. I remembered all the moments we spent there, the times we went together, how happy he was with him. She interrupted herself as if she realized too late what she was saying, but the damage was already done. I felt like I couldn't breathe. She still keeps his clothes? I asked, unable to prevent my voice from rising slightly. Laura looked up again, this time with a mixture of guilt and defiance in her eyes. It's not what you think, she said quickly. It's not that I have it because I can't get over it. It's just a memory, nothing more. I let out a sarcastic laugh, incredulous. A memory, crying, hugging his shirt after you went to his favorite restaurant and relived all those happy moments. I said, making quotation marks with my fingers. Laura frowned. You don't understand. No, Laura, I think I understand perfectly, I interrupted. I understand that you told me that you wanted to move on with me, that I was the person you wanted to be with, but here you are hugging his clothes and crying because you remembered how much you loved him. The atmosphere became thick. She didn't say anything for a moment, just stood there holding the shirt as if it were the most valuable thing in the world. Finally, she sighed and put the garment aside. I don't want to fight, she said, her voice sounding exhausted. I don't want this to turn into another argument. Well, you should have thought about it before doing something you can't just ignore. It's not just the shirt, Laura, it's everything. All of this. You're still stuck in the past, and you don't even realize it. She bit her lip, but didn't answer. I got up from the bed and walked to the door. I couldn't stay there, not at that moment. Before leaving, I stopped and sighed. I need time, I said without turning to look at her. I need to think about all this. I heard her ragged breathing behind me, but I didn't wait for an answer. I left the room and closed the door behind me, feeling something inside me breaking into pieces. I went home with my mind a mess. I didn't know what to do. On the one hand, I wanted to believe it was just a moment of weakness, that she was really trying to move on, and that she just had a bad day. But on the other hand, all this made me feel like I was fighting against a shadow, against a ghost that would always be present in our relationship. Could I really be with someone who, despite everything, was still so attached to their past? Could I move on without feeling like I would always be competing with a memory? Update. Hi. I'm totally devastated by this bitter ending, but here goes. After the argument, I spent the next few days at my parents' house. I needed distance. I needed to think. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to hear her voice or face the reality that everything we had worked for seemed to be falling apart. Laura sent me messages every day. Some were short and desperate. Please say something. Others were long, trying to explain the inexplicable. I don't know what happened to me. I'm really sorry. I know this isn't right, but I love you and I want to fix it. As much as it hurt, I ignored them. But then, one day she showed up at my parents' front door. She wasn't wearing any makeup. Her face was swollen from crying, and she could barely speak without her voice breaking. I'm going to therapy, she told me, looking me in the eye. I don't want to lose you. I'll do whatever it takes to get through this. For a moment, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this could be fixed. Maybe she really was ready to leave Daniel behind and focus on our future together. I didn't answer immediately, but after a long silence I nodded. If you really want to do it, but don't do it just for me. Do it for yourself. The days passed, and Laura started to look better. She sent me pictures of her therapist's office and even told me about the first session. She seemed calmer, more focused. She said she understood what she had done wrong and that she wanted to change. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. I thought everything would be okay until that night arrived. Laura had gone out with her friends. She told me it would just be dinner, nothing extravagant. I didn't have a problem with that. I thought a little distraction would do her good. But when she returned, everything changed. I heard her come through the door with a slight wobble in her step. I got up from the sofa to get a better look at her. She was wearing her tight dress, her makeup a little smudged, and a huge smile on her face. "Hi, my love," she said in a sweet voice, coming quickly towards me. I noticed the smell of alcohol on her breath, but she wasn't completely drunk. She had that level of drunkenness where you're still aware, but with reduced inhibition. I smiled from ear to ear and, without warning, she threw herself on me, hugging me tightly. "I missed you," she murmured into my neck. "I want you so much." Her voice was soft, almost like a purr. Her lips began to travel down my neck, her hands down my back, and before I knew it, she was kissing me desperately. I let myself get carried away for a moment. I forgot everything that had happened. It was just her and me in that instant, entangled in a kiss that became more and more intense. And then she said it. "I love you, Daniel." My world stopped. My whole body tensed up suddenly. I pulled away from her abruptly, feeling my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. Laura's eyes snapped open. The expression on her face went from euphoria to horror in a matter of seconds. "No," I whispered, my voice barely leaving my throat. "No, no, no." She started to cry immediately. She put her hands over her mouth as if she wanted to swallow her words and make them disappear. "I didn't mean that," she cried, coming closer to me. "Please, listen to me. It was a mistake." "A mistake," I repeated, my voice shaking with fury and pain. "You call me Daniel." Tears fell uncontrollably down my cheeks. I felt betrayed, humiliated, completely destroyed. Everything we had tried to build, all the attempts to move forward crumbled in a single second. "I don't know why I said that," she sobbed. "I don't love him. I love you. It's you I want." "Don't yell," I said, pointing at her, trembling. Don't you dare say that, because the moment you let yourself go, the moment everything in you was pure instinct, his name was the one that came out of your mouth. Laura fell to her knees, her hands covering her face as she sobbed inconsolably. It hurt me to see her like that, but it hurt me even more to know the truth, to know that no matter how much she wanted to deny it, Daniel was still her priority. No matter how hard she tried to get over him, he would always be there. I tried, Laura, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I really tried, but I can't anymore. She looked up, her expression terrified. No, no, please, don't leave me. You left me no choice, I said firmly. This isn't something I can forget. It's not something I can get over. I always knew his shadow was between us, but I wanted to believe we could overcome it. But no, we can't, and I don't want to be a replacement anymore. Laura crawled towards me, clinging to my leg as if her life depended on it. Please, she begged, give me another chance. I swear I'll do anything. I'll prove to you that I love you. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I knew that if I stayed there a second longer, maybe I would give in. Maybe I would fall for her crying, her pain, and give her another chance just to prolong the inevitable. But I couldn't do it. I shouldn't do it. I pulled away from her and took a step back. Goodbye, Laura. She screamed my name one last time as I left the room. My heart was pounding, my head was spinning, and the tears kept falling, but I had made my decision, and, even though it hurt, it was the only right one. In the end, I was never her first choice, and I never would be. It's been a few weeks since that night. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh, if I should have had more patience, if she really would have changed. But then I remember the pain I felt hearing that name come out of her mouth in such an intimate moment, and any doubt disappears. It's not about competing with a ghost. It's about respect, self-love, and understanding that sometimes, no matter how much we love someone, we're simply not what that person needs. I wanted to help her. I wanted to be her support, but in the end I realized that the healing process didn't depend on me. It wasn't my battle. Sometimes love is not enough, and it's okay to walk away when you realize that you're losing yourself trying to hold on to someone who can't let go of the past. I don't hate her. I hope she really sought help and found the peace she so desperately needs. I, for my part, am also moving on, learning to value myself and remembering that I deserve someone who loves me for who I am, not for who I was or who I tried to be in her life. Story 5. A girl made me look like a stalker in front of everyone just because I rejected her, and now karma has given her what she deserves. The first day of school always has a special air, a mixture of nerves and curiosity about what's to come. I, Adrienne, was anxious. It was my first year of high school, and everything seemed like a completely new world. I was walking down the halls trying to find my classroom when I crossed paths with her. Myra was a girl with long, straight, dark hair and a radiant smile that captured anyone's attention. She was wearing a red sweater that made her stand out from the others. We looked at each other briefly, and although we didn't exchange words, that moment was enough for me to remember her. The first time we spoke was during a group activity in literature class. The teacher asked us to form groups of 4, and since I didn't know anyone, I approached the nearest group where Myra was. "Hi, I'm Myra," she said with a kind and confident voice as she extended her hand. I replied with a smile and a handshake. I realized that she was an outgoing and charismatic person, which made everyone in the group feel comfortable quickly. We worked in that group for several weeks, and it was inevitable that I would get to know her better. Myra was one of those people who always has something interesting to say, whether it's a witty comment or an anecdote that elicits laughter. I discovered that she had a special inclination for art, and that she used to draw in her free time. I, being more reserved and a lover of music, found that our conversations always flowed naturally. However, I never felt that there was anything more than friendship between us. Over time, Myra and I became good friends. We weren't inseparable, but we talked enough to share details of our lives. She always seemed interested in knowing more about me, but I assumed it was just her way of being. I never thought it could mean anything more. Our friendship began to stand out a bit more when I started helping her with math. She was brilliant in the arts, but numbers were not her forte, and she often joked that algebraic equations looked like hieroglyphics. We would spend hours after school in the library reviewing problems and exercises. Although I enjoyed helping her, I couldn't ignore how she sometimes stared at me or looked for any excuse to prolong our sessions. In my naivete, I attributed it to simple camaraderie. One afternoon, while we were packing up our things after another study session, she said something that made me think. "You're different from other guys, Adrian," she commented softly. I looked at her somewhat confused and replied, "In what way?" She smiled and simply said, "In the best way." I didn't think much of it at the time, but now that I think about it, maybe that was the first sign of what was to come. As the months went by, other classmates began to notice our closeness. There were rumors about whether we were more than friends, but I always denied it. She, however, never clarified things, which sometimes fueled the speculation. I wasn't too worried because I knew there was nothing romantic between us, at least on my part. What surprised me most about Myra was her ability to charm others. She was popular, but not in a superficial way. She had a wide group of friends and always seemed to be the center of attention at social gatherings. I, on the other hand, preferred to keep a low profile. Maybe that's why we got along so well. Our personalities contrasted, but they complemented each other. However, there was something about her that I noticed over time. Myra had a competitive and possessive side that surfaced in certain situations. For example, if someone else came up to ask me for help with math, she would get annoyed and make sarcastic comments. On one occasion, she even told me, "I don't want you to waste your time with others when you could be helping me." I took it lightly, but now, looking back, I see that it was a sign of something deeper. Everything seemed to be going well, but I couldn't ignore that there was an intensity in the way she acted with me that she didn't have with others. Sometimes she would make gestures that crossed the line of friendship, like leaning on my shoulder during class or inviting me to her house to study, and then turning those sessions into long personal conversations. I can't deny that it was flattering, but I just didn't see her that way. As the semester ended, I felt that something in our dynamic was changing. Although I couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was, Myra was still kind and close, but there was an air of expectation in her words and actions, as if she was waiting for me to do something. I didn't give it much importance, thinking that they were probably my ideas. I couldn't have been more wrong. The semester ended and winter break arrived. During that time, I didn't talk much with Myra, which gave me a break from the intensity of our friendship. It was during those weeks that I began to reflect on what I really felt for her, and I came to the conclusion that, although I valued her as a friend, I had no interest in taking our relationship further. What I didn't know was that those vacations would be the prelude to an unexpected turn that would change our lives. I returned from vacation with renewed energy, ready to face the new semester. The school routine resumed quickly, and everything seemed to continue as usual. Myra and I picked up our friendship where we left off, although I noticed something different about her. She was more attentive, closer than usual. Her messages were more constant, and the invitations to spend time together outside of school became more frequent. I didn't give it much importance, believing that she simply wanted to make up for lost time. One day, after class, Myra asked me to accompany her to a nearby park. "I have something important to tell you," she said in a tone that seemed serene, but her hands played nervously with the strap of her backpack. I thought she wanted to talk about some family or school problem, so I accepted without hesitation. We sat on a bench under the shade of a tree, away from the bustle of the other students. There was a strange air, a mixture of tension and expectation that made me slightly uncomfortable. She began by speaking casually, recalling our study sessions and the times we had shared laughter in class, but then her tone changed. "Adrian," she began, avoiding my gaze, "this vacation made me think a lot about you, about us." My heart skipped a beat, but not out of emotion, but out of a premonition I didn't like. "I think, well, I don't know, that I feel something more for you," she finally said, raising her eyes to meet mine. "I like you, Adrian, and I can't hide it anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears as I processed her words. I had never been in a situation like this and didn't know how to respond without hurting her. I took a breath and tried to be as honest as possible. "Myra," I said carefully, "I really value our friendship and you're an incredible person, but I don't feel the same way. You've always been a friend to me, and I don't want that to change." Her smile slowly faded, replaced by an expression of surprise and pain. "You don't feel anything for me?" she asked as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I shook my head, trying to keep my tone calm. "I'm very sorry, Myra. I don't want to hurt you, but it would be unfair to pretend something I don't feel." For a moment, I thought I was handling it well. She nodded slowly and said, I understand. I guess. Thanks for being honest. But there was something in her voice and the way she pressed her lips together that made me doubt her acceptance. In the days that followed, Myra acted as if everything was fine. We kept talking, although there was a slight awkwardness in our interactions. I thought that over time everything would return to normal, but I was wrong. I started to notice small changes in her behavior. She wrote me more messages than before, many of them asking where I was or who I was with. If I talked to another classmate, she would appear out of nowhere to join the conversation, almost as if she were marking territory. Although I didn't want to assume the worst, there was something about her attitude that worried me. One day, during recess, Myra approached me while I was with a group of friends. She sat next to me, closer than usual, and started talking about trivial things. Everything seemed normal until, at a moment when the others weren't paying attention, she slid her hand over mine. I quickly withdrew it, pretending that nothing had happened, but my mind was in chaos. Had I misinterpreted my rejection? Did she think there was still a chance? That night, while reflecting on what had happened, I decided that I should talk to her again. I needed to make it clear that there was no possibility of anything romantic between us, and that, if she continued acting that way, our friendship could be in danger. The next day, I looked for her after class and asked her to talk privately. I calmly explained how I felt and asked her to respect the boundaries of our relationship. Myra seemed to listen to me, but her answers were evasive. I understand, Adrian, really. I just want you to know that I'll always be here for you, no matter what. Her smile was warm, but there was something in her eyes that worried me, a determination I hadn't seen before. I thought I had handled the situation as best as possible, but I didn't know that this was just the beginning of a series of events that would test not only our friendship, but also my reputation and my emotional stability. Things with Myra began to escalate in a way I didn't expect. After our conversation, in which I tried to make it clear that there was no possibility of anything more between us, her attitude began to change. If at first she seemed to accept my rejection, little by little she began to demonstrate behaviors that crossed the boundaries of what is considered a healthy friendship. One day in class, our biology teacher assigned us a team project. To my bad luck, I was paired with Camila, a classmate who was quite friendly and with whom I had always had a cordial relationship. As soon as the discussions about how we would divide the tasks began, I noticed that Myra was watching us from the other side of the room. Her gaze was not casual. There was an intensity in it that made me uncomfortable. While Camila and I were talking about our ideas, Myra got up from her seat and walked directly towards us. Without even asking permission, she interrupted our conversation and stood next to me, practically glued to my shoulder. "What are you talking about?" she asked with a forced smile. Before I could answer, she added, "I'm sure Camila has great ideas. She's very smart." Although her tone was kind, there was evident tension in her words. Camila, confused, tried to include Myra in the conversation, but she had no interest in the project. Instead, she began to divert the topic towards trivial and personal matters. Finally, Camila, uncomfortable, excused herself to go to the bathroom. It was then that Myra turned to me with a triumphant expression. "I don't think it's a good idea for you to talk to her so much," she said, as if she had the right to decide who I could interact with. "I'm not doing anything wrong," I replied, trying to remain calm. "We're just talking about the project." "Yes, but you don't know how girls like her are. Trust me, I don't want you to get into trouble." That was one of the first times I realized how territorial she had become, but things didn't stop there. That same night, as I was lying in bed checking my social media, my phone started ringing. It was Myra. I thought about not answering, but, fearing that it was something important, I ended up answering. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Hi, Adrian. Sorry to call you so late, but I wanted to hear your voice," she said. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying not to sound annoyed. "Yes, I just miss you. I feel like we haven't talked much lately. I miss you a lot." I didn't know how to respond to that. I tried to change the subject, but she kept insisting. Finally, I said goodbye with the excuse that I was sleepy and hung up. I thought that would be it, but shortly after I received a message. It was a picture of Myra wearing a tight top and short shorts. The message read, "Oops, sorry, wrong number. This photo was for my friend. I was going to ask her if this outfit looked good on me. Forget it, winking face, or what?" My discomfort was growing. I didn't know how to deal with this situation. but I decided to ignore the photo and not respond. However, this became a routine. Every few nights, Myra would find an excuse to call me or send me messages, often accompanied by pictures where she wore increasingly revealing clothing. She always said that they were mistakes, that the photos weren't for me, but I couldn't help but feel that she was doing it intentionally. The straw that broke the camel's back came a few weeks later. I was walking down the school hallway when I ran into one of my classmates, Sophia. We stopped to talk about an assignment we were working on, and the conversation didn't last more than 5 minutes. However, when I turned around to continue on my way, I found Myra standing at the end of the hallway watching us. "What were you doing with her?" she asked when I reached her. "We were just talking about an assignment," I replied, trying to downplay the matter. "I don't like you talking to other girls so much, Adrian. You don't know what they might be thinking." "Myra, you can't tell me who I can or can't talk to," I replied, feeling my patience wearing thin. "I do it because I care about you," she retorted. These types of situations began to become more frequent, and my life became a constant state of tension. Every time I talked to a female classmate or even one of my female friends, I could feel Myra's eyes following me and judging me. The situation continued to worsen. I had tried to be clear from the beginning. I had tried to set boundaries, but Myra didn't seem willing to accept them. The worst part was that I didn't know how to explain to others what was happening without it seeming like I was exaggerating. In the eyes of others, Myra was still the sweet and kind girl everyone knew, but I was seeing a completely different side of her. I knew I had to do something, but I still didn't know what. What I couldn't imagine was that things were about to get much, much worse. I thought things couldn't get any worse, but I was wrong. Everything that had happened up to that point, the intense stares, the possessive comments, the late-night calls, and the suggestive photos, was just the beginning. Myra decided to take things to a whole new level. It all started one Monday when I arrived at school and noticed some of my classmates looking at me strangely. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it, but as the day went on, the whispers and stares became more obvious. It was during lunchtime when one of my friends, Marco, approached me with a serious expression. "Adrian, can I talk to you for a moment?" he said as he moved his lunch tray aside. "Sure, what's up?" I replied. "Listen, I don't know if you know this, but there's something being said about you and Myra." I felt a knot in my stomach. "What are they saying?" "Well, Myra is saying that you've been harassing her," Marco replied, lowering his voice so no one else could hear. My mind went blank. What? That doesn't make any sense. What exactly is she saying? Well, that you're constantly sending her messages, that you're making advances towards her, and that you even tried to kiss her without her consent once. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt a mixture of disbelief and rage. How could Myra invent something like that? Just as I was trying to understand what was happening, I received a WhatsApp message. It was from Myra. "I hope you learn your lesson, Adrian. Nobody rejects me. Now you'll know what it feels like to be in my place, winking face." I read the message several times trying to process it. I knew I had to act fast, but I also knew that facing this situation wouldn't be easy. Myra had built an image of herself as someone trustworthy and sweet. I, on the other hand, was being painted as the villain. Over the next few days, the rumors continued to grow. The gossip spread like wildfire through the school, and Myra even showed supposed messages that I had sent her. The most frustrating thing was that those messages were manipulated screenshots. She had edited conversations and taken out of context the few times I had responded to make it look like I was the one pursuing her. I felt trapped. Almost no one was on my side, and although some of my close friends knew that I would never do something like that, most of my classmates started avoiding me. Every time I walked down the halls, I could feel the looks of contempt or curiosity. Some even openly mocked me. "How does it feel to be rejected, stalker?" I heard someone whisper behind me one day. The situation reached a critical point when I was called to the principal's office. When I entered, Myra was there, with tears in her eyes and pretending to be the perfect victim. She said she was afraid of me and that she needed the school to take measures to protect her. "Mr. Adrian," the principal began, "these accusations are serious. We are going to investigate, but in the meantime, we ask that you keep your distance from Miss Myra." I wanted to scream. I wanted to defend myself, but I knew I didn't have enough evidence. It was at that moment that I made a decision. I was going to gather all the evidence I had, from the messages Myra had sent me to the photos she herself had sent, That night, I went through my phone and compiled everything that could prove my innocence. I knew it was going to be difficult, but I also knew I had to do it. What I didn't expect was that this decision would not only clear my name, but it would also be the beginning of the end for Myra. The night after being called to the principal's office, I sat in my room with my phone in hand and a firm resolve. I had to clear my name. What Myra had done wasn't just an attack on my reputation, but also a threat to my dignity and my values. I knew this battle wasn't going to be easy, but I wasn't going to let her destroy me. First, I reviewed every conversation I'd had with Myra. There were messages from her insisting that we see each other, messages where she told me she missed me, and others more blatant that hinted at things I had always ignored. They were there, clear as day, but the most important thing was to prove that never, at any time, had I shown interest in her, never flirted with her, nor given her any reason to think I wanted anything more than a classmate relationship. Then I got to the photos. I had deleted them many times because they made me uncomfortable and inappropriate, but Myra always found a way to send me more. Fortunately, I still had some of the conversations where she herself said the photos were a mistake, excusing herself with phrases like, "Oops, sorry, that photo was for my friend winking face. What do you think of the dress?" Although those photos were crucial evidence, I knew I wasn't going to show them to anyone but the principal. I didn't want to stoop to her level or give anyone else reason to judge her. As much as she deserved it, I wasn't like that, and I wasn't going to turn this into a morbid spectacle. The next day, I arrived early at the principal's office. I had requested an urgent meeting with him to present my case. When he received me, I found him with an expression of tiredness and concern. I assumed it wasn't easy dealing with a scandal of this magnitude at the school. "Mr. Adrian, I hope you have something to say that can clarify this situation," he said as he invited me to sit down. "Principal," I began firmly, "I want to clear my name, and to do so, I have brought evidence. But before I show it, I want to make something clear. I'm not here to attack anyone or cause more problems. I just want the truth to come out." I took out my phone and showed him the conversations I had saved. I started with the lighter messages, the ones that showed how Myra had insisted on seeing me outside of school and calling me at night. Then I moved on to the more explicit messages, those where she hinted at things I had always ignored or responded to politely, so as not to be rude. The principal read carefully, nodding occasionally. "This changes things," he finally murmured. I got to the subject of the photos. "There's something else, but I want to handle it discreetly," I said. "Myra sent me inappropriate photos on several occasions. I don't want to show them to anyone else because I don't want to humiliate her or make this bigger than it already is, but they are here and they prove they were not solicited by me." The principal looked at me seriously. "It's a noble gesture on your part, Adrian, but we need to see them to confirm the facts." I showed him the photos, avoiding looking at the screen because the mere fact of having to present them made me uncomfortable. He took note of everything and assured me that he would use them only for the internal investigation. After my meeting with the principal, I felt a bit of relief, but it wasn't enough. The rumors were still circulating, and I needed to address the problem publicly. That's when I decided to talk to my friends and classmates, the few who still believed in me, to explain my version of the facts. One Friday during recess, I stood in the middle of the main schoolyard. It wasn't easy. I felt that everyone was looking at me judgmentally, but I also knew I couldn't remain silent. "Listen," I began in a firm voice. "I know many of you have heard things about me and Myra. I want to clarify something. I am not a stalker, and I never have been. What is being said about me is not true, and I have proof to demonstrate it." Some laughed. Others remained silent, but I continued. "I'm not going to go into details because I don't want to humiliate anyone, but I can tell you that everything Myra has said is a lie. All I did was reject her, and this is what I received in return." After I spoke, many of my classmates began to question Myra's version. Some even remembered seeing how she followed me or how jealous she got when I talked to other girls. Little by little, the balance began to tip in my favor. A few days later, the principal called Myra and me to a final meeting. When I arrived, she was sitting with an expression of false innocence. However, her attitude changed quickly when the principal presented the evidence I had provided. "Myra, these conversations and photos contradict everything you have said," the principal began. "Not only that, but we have received other testimonies from classmates who have confirmed behaviors of yours that do not match your version of events." Myra tried to defend herself, but it was useless. Finally, she broke down in tears and admitted that she had made everything up because she was upset by my rejection. Although she tried to justify her actions, the damage was already done. The principal decided to suspend Myra indefinitely, and, although she wasn't expelled, her reputation was completely ruined. For my part, I finally felt that I had regained my dignity. A couple of days after the meeting with the principal, I was asked to attend another meeting at the school. This time, in addition to Myra and the principal, her parents would be present. From what I knew of them, they were extremely religious and strict, and the idea of facing them filled me with nerves. I had no idea how they would react to learning the truth about what their daughter had done. When I entered the meeting room, the tension was palpable. Myra was sitting at the back with her head down, while her parents, a severe-looking couple, occupied the chairs in front of the principal. They greeted me with a slight nod, but their faces reflected disappointment and a mix of emotions difficult to decipher. The principal opened the meeting by briefly explaining what had happened. He reviewed the evidence I had provided and made it clear that everything pointed to Myra having fabricated the rumors against me as a way of getting revenge for my rejection. As he spoke, the faces of Myra's parents darkened more and more. When the principal finished, it was Myra's father who spoke. His voice was firm but laden with regret. "Young Adrian," he began, "on behalf of my family, I want to offer you a sincere apology. What my daughter did was shameful, not only for you, but also for us and for our God. We have failed as parents in not guiding her in the right way." I was surprised by the sincerity of his words. I didn't expect them to be so direct or so harsh with their daughter. Myra's mother, who had remained silent until that moment, intervened with tears in her eyes. "We are deeply sorry. Myra has not only dishonored our family, but she has also disrespected the values in which we have raised her." They didn't stop there. They insisted that Myra apologize to me directly. She looked up with tear-filled eyes and murmured "I'm sorry," that was barely audible. "That's not enough, Myra," her father said harshly. "Speak clearly and take responsibility." Myra took a deep breath and this time spoke more firmly. "Adrian, I am so sorry for everything I did. I made up things that weren't true and put you in a horrible position. I have no excuses and I deeply regret causing so much harm." After the meeting, I thought everything was over, but it wasn't. Myra's parents decided that the private apology wasn't enough. They wanted their daughter to face the consequences of her actions publicly. The next day, the school organized a special assembly. All the students were summoned to the auditorium, and I was invited to attend as well. When I arrived, I felt everyone's eyes on me. There were murmurs everywhere. Many knew about the rumors, but few knew the whole truth. Myra was on stage next to her parents, her face pale and her hands trembling. Myra's father took the microphone first. "Good morning, everyone. We are here today because my daughter, Myra, made a serious mistake. She invented lies about a classmate, Adrian, that affected his reputation and his life. As a family, we believe in the truth and in taking responsibility for our actions, so Myra has something to say." Myra took the microphone with trembling hands. For a moment I thought she wouldn't be able to speak, but finally she did. "I want to apologize to all of you, especially to Adrian," she said, her voice breaking. "I said things that weren't true and I acted selfishly because I didn't know how to handle my emotions. I'm very sorry for the harm I caused. I hope that someday you can forgive me." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence. Some classmates looked at me with regret, as if they felt guilty for having believed the rumors. Others looked at Myra with contempt. After the public apology, Myra's parents made a drastic decision. They took her out of the school. They had lost confidence that this institution could set her straight and decided to enroll her in a strict religious school for girls. According to them, it was the only way to guide her back to the right path. When I heard about this, I had mixed feelings. On the one hand, I felt that karma had caught up with Myra, but on the other hand, I couldn't help but feel a certain pity for her. Although what she had done was unforgivable, I couldn't stop thinking about the weight of expectations and the strict rules her parents had imposed on her life. This experience taught me a lot, not only about people but also about myself. I never thought I would have to defend my integrity in this way, but I learned that the truth always comes out, even if it takes time. I also realized how important it is to remain calm and act with dignity even in the most unfair situations. As for my era, I hope that someday she can reflect on what she did and become a better person. We all make mistakes, and although some have more serious consequences than others, there is always room for repentance and change. Finally, I thank the people who supported me and believed in me when it seemed that everything was against me. This experience reminded me that, although the world can be unfair, we should never lose faith in our truth or injustice. Story 6. My wife had an accident with her lover, and now she wants me to take care of her. Hi Reddit. I never thought I'd end up writing something like this, but I feel like I can't take it anymore. I feel trapped in a situation that seems straight out of an absurd movie, and I need to let it out somewhere. I don't know if I'm looking for advice, validation, or just someone to read this and tell me I'm not crazy for feeling this way. My name is Rodrigo. I'm 36 years old, and until recently, I thought I had a relatively stable marriage, or at least a normal one, with its ups and downs, but nothing that made me think the ground beneath my feet was going to open up the way it did. I've been married to Yesenia for 7 years. She's 34. We don't have children, but we do have a whole life built together. A house, a routine, mutual friends, family vacations, you know, the typical stuff. Everything changed a few weeks ago. It was an ordinary Wednesday, midweek, that point where you're so caught up in the routine that you don't think anymore. You just do. I was at work as usual, in the office. I'm an administrator at a logistics company, so the days are usually long, predictable, and frankly, boring. I remember I was finishing up answering some emails when I got a call. Unknown number. I don't usually answer calls from numbers I don't have saved, but for some reason that day I did, and it was the call that split my life in two. A woman's voice, serious, professional, told me, "Mr. Rodrigo RG, we're calling from the General Hospital. Your wife has been in a traffic accident, and we need you to come as soon as possible." At that moment, I felt like the world stopped. I got up so fast that I knocked over my chair. I don't know how I got to the hospital. I barely remember driving. I just remember my heart pounding like it was going to burst out of my chest. When I arrived, the first thing I noticed was the confusion. I approached the reception desk and said I was here for my wife, Yesenia SC, that they had called me because she had been in an accident. The receptionist checked something on her computer and looked at me with a raised eyebrow. "Are you her brother?" "I'm sorry, aren't you her husband?" The woman looked at me strangely, as if I were lying. She asked me again if I was sure, and then said something that left me frozen. "It's just that, well, when the patient was admitted, she was accompanied by another man, and they were both unconscious. They didn't have any identification on hand, but the man who was with her was wearing a wedding ring. We assumed he was her husband." I didn't know what to answer. I just felt a pit in my stomach. "And the other man?" I asked. "He's also in intensive care. It was a serious accident. They're both intubated." I didn't understand anything. Why would my wife be with another man? Who is he? Why do they think he's her husband? What's going on? I wondered as my head spun. I could barely breathe. I was in shock. They let me in after I signed some papers, and when I saw her, oh my God, I can't describe what I felt. Yesenia was unconscious, full of tubes, bruises all over her body, her face swollen, pale. She was unrecognizable. They told me she had several fractures, broken ribs, a punctured lung, that they were doing everything they could, but that the first 72 hours were critical. I sat next to her bed and took her hand. I cried. Yes, I cried like I hadn't since my mother died. At that moment, I didn't care who the other guy was or why he was with her. I just wanted her to be saved. The first few days were the worst of my life. I slept in the hospital chairs, ate what I could, barely spoke to anyone. I was just there waiting for her to wake up. Every time an alarm went off, I felt like I was going to faint. And the worst part is that nobody, absolutely nobody, gave me clear answers about what had happened. Every time I asked how the accident happened, the doctors told me the same thing. It was a head-on collision with a semi-truck. We don't have many details. The police are still investigating. But what were they doing together? Why didn't anyone else seem surprised by that? 5 days passed. 5 damn days where Yesenia didn't wake up, and I just received strange looks from some doctors and nurses. Some treated me with kindness, others with that condescension with which someone out of place is treated. Until one of the nurses, a young guy with a tired face, told me something unintentionally, or so I think. He was changing Yesenia's for, and while he was doing it, he asked me, Are you the immediate family member? I'm her husband. I answered almost automatically. He was silent for a few seconds and then said, without looking at me, "Oh, I thought it was the other gentleman, sorry." He said it as if it were nothing, as if it were obvious that the other one made more sense. That's where I started to feel that thing inside me, that mixture of rage, fear, pain, and confusion, like a ball of fire in my stomach. And the more I thought about it, the more my chest hurt. I called her best friend, her sister, her mother. Everyone knew about the accident. Everyone had gone to see her. Nobody said anything about the person she was with. When I asked, they changed the subject or told me they didn't know, but I knew they did. Who was that man? I didn't know his name, but the hospital did. I went to the counter and insisted. I told them that, as Yesenia's husband, I had the right to know everything about the case. They told me that the other man was still in serious condition, that he was also intubated, and that he couldn't receive visitors yet, that his family had already been contacted. And when I asked his name, they told me, Samuel Each. I had never heard it before, but when I looked him up on Facebook, there he was, private profile, but the profile picture was clear. He was a tall man with a trimmed beard, in his 40s, and in the cover photo he appeared with Yesenia hugging, smiling in a park. There was no date, no description, but my heart was shattered. That's when I knew, or at least suspected, and since then everything I had felt for her began to crumble like a house of cards. And she still hasn't woken up. I haven't been able to ask her anything. I haven't been able to yell at her. I haven't been able to cry in front of her. I haven't been able to know why. I'm just here trapped, watching her sleep, taking care of someone who apparently betrayed me in the worst possible way, and yet, I'm still here. I'm still here, and I don't know why. Update. Hi everyone, it's Rodrigo again. I didn't think this post would reach so many people. Seriously, thank you. I have no words to describe what I felt when I saw that my story went so viral. I thought people were going to ignore me or throw me away, but most of the comments were empathetic, sincere, and yes, there were also many who told me that I might be jumping to conclusions. And at that moment, even though something inside me already knew, I tried to hold on to that possibility, the possibility that I was wrong, that it was all a misunderstanding, that there was a logical explanation for everything. I wish it had been that way. It's been 2 weeks since I wrote that first post, and they've been the heaviest, longest, and most emotionally devastating 2 weeks of my life. Not just because of what I discovered, but because I'm still trapped in the middle of a situation where there are no winners anymore, just pieces. But well, here's the update many of you asked for. Yesenia woke up 3 days after I wrote that first post. She had been intubated in intensive care for several days, with everyone telling me they didn't know if she was going to wake up at all, and suddenly, one night I got the call. They told me she opened her eyes, that she was stable but weak, confused, and they still needed to monitor her. When I went in to see her, I couldn't say anything. I just stood there in front of her bed looking at her. She saw me, smiled weakly, and barely managed to whisper, "Rodri." I couldn't help but cry. After everything that had happened, everything I felt, everything I suspected, I had her there, alive, looking at me as if I were her everything, as if nothing had happened, and that broke me more than anything else. During that first day, I didn't ask her anything. The doctors asked me not to upset her, that she still didn't remember the accident well, that she probably had partial amnesia from the blow. She asked me random questions. What happened? Why was I here? How long have I been in the hospital? I explained the basics, that she had a car accident, that she was unconscious for several days, that she was safe now. But I didn't mention Samuel, not yet. During that day I stayed with her, brought her some personal things they asked for at the hospital, talked to her sisters, who, by the way, kept avoiding my gaze, and tried to behave like someone O was simply happy to see his wife alive, and yes, part of me was. But another part wanted to scream in her face, ask her why with him, why she did this to me, why she had me as an idiot while she was going out with someone else. That night, I didn't sleep. I went home, lay in our bed, that bed where I now know she lied to me so many times, and just stared at the ceiling going over and over how I should approach her. The next day, when I returned, she looked a little more lucid. She was already speaking more fluently. She told me she had strange dreams while she was unconscious, asked me if I had talked to her work, asked me about the car, and in the middle of that conversation, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to ask, I didn't want to keep pretending. Yesenia, I said, looking at her intently. Who is Samuel? Her face changed. First she tensed up, then she tried to act confused. Samuel who? Don't pretend. You were with him in the car. You were both taken to the hospital, intubated. The hospital thought he was your husband. She was silent, avoiding my gaze. I don't know what you're talking about, she finally said. I don't remember anything about the accident, Rodri. I didn't say anything else that day, but something inside me was already decided. She could lie to me. She could pretend, but the truth was there. It just needed her to say it out loud. 3 more days passed. During that time, her recovery progressed quickly. She was already eating soft foods. She could already sit up. She was already talking to the nurses as if nothing had happened, and I continued to take care of her, accompany her, bring her things, sign papers. From the outside, I looked like the perfect husband. Inside, I was breaking down, and then one of her sisters, the youngest, Anna, couldn't take it anymore. She approached me one day when I went out to buy Yesenia some juice and asked to speak to me alone. We went to a bench in the parking lot, and there she let it out. Rodrigo, Samuel was her lover. Just like that, bluntly, as if stabbing me in the chest. She told me they had been together for quite some time, that they saw each other when Yesenia supposedly went on business trips or to visit her other sisters, that several times they had gone away together for weekend getaways, that Yesenia always said she loved me, but that with Samuel it was different, that she, the sister, didn't agree, but that she didn't know how to stop her. I asked her how long this had been going on. She told me more than a year, more than a damn year. I returned to the room without saying a word, went in, looked at her, sat in front of her, and this time I didn't give her room for excuses. I know everything now. I know who Samuel is. I know he was your lover. Your sister told me. Yesenia froze. Her expression went from surprise to shame and then to tears. She cried like I'd never seen her cry before. She apologized, told me she loved me, that it had all been a mistake, that Samuel meant nothing, that it was just a phase, that she was going to leave him. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. What was I supposed to do? Forgive her right there? Scream? Break down? Since then, every day is a mixture of emotions. She's still recovering. She can't fend for herself completely, and I'm still the main contact at the hospital. Her sisters help, but for some reason she still calls me when she needs something. She asks me to stay, not to leave her alone, tells me she made a mistake and that she regrets it. But what am I supposed to do with all this? I can't see her without imagining her with him. I can't touch her without thinking about the lies. I can't listen to her without remembering how she tried to deny it even while lying in that bed, and yet, there's still a part of me that feels responsible, that wants to take care of her as if it were a moral obligation after so many years together. I don't know if it's love, habit, or just stupidity. For now, I still don't know what to do. Some tell me to leave her, to run away, that she doesn't deserve anything. Others tell me to wait. That time will tell what to do, but I'm in the middle of the hurricane with no direction. Thank you for reading. Update. It's been a month since I wrote my first post, a month since my life took such a ridiculous, absurd turn, that I still find it hard to process that all of this has been real, and as promised, here I am writing what will probably be the last update. I have read many of your comments, the advice, the messages of support, even those who told me I was a fool for staying there. And yes, I probably was. But there's something you learn when your heart is broken this way. Nobody knows exactly what they would do until they are in the same place. During those first few weeks, I didn't know what to feel. I didn't know whether to hate her or pity her, whether to care for her out of humanity or abandon her for dignity. Every day I woke up with a new emotion stuck in my chest. One morning, I wanted to hug her. The next, I wanted to disappear without saying a word. I felt trapped between two versions of myself, the one who loved Yesenia for years and the one who couldn't see her without imagining her with Samuel. A friend of mine, whom I respect very much, was the one who helped me make the decision that I think was the fairest for both of us. He told me something that stuck with me. Do what's right, not what you feel. If she needs basic medical care, give it to her. But you don't have to accompany her all the time or stay watching Netflix with her in the hospital as if nothing had happened. Do the bare minimum if that makes you feel at peace with yourself, and when she gets out, you face her and then decide if you want to keep carrying this or let her go forever. So that's what I did. For the next 2 weeks, I continued to help her with the basics: medication, food, paperwork with the hospital, and practical things, but I didn't spend as much time with her anymore. I didn't accompany her to watch TV. I didn't hold her hand, and I didn't pretend to be the loving husband. I did what was right, and yes, it hurt because seeing her like that, so fragile, so hurt, and at the same time knowing that that fragility was born from a lie that she herself built was hard. Finally, the day came when Yesenia was discharged. I had to go get her, take her home, and receive her in the same room where we started our life together, where we planned a future, where we dreamed of having children, of traveling, of growing old. She came in a wheelchair, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes. But with that look of hers, she always used to convince me of everything. As soon as we crossed the door, she burst into tears. "Rodrigo, please don't leave me, not now." I was already prepared. I knew that moment was going to come. I knew she was going to try to get back what she broke, what she herself trampled on. "Yesenia," I said calmly, "it's not about whether I leave you or not anymore. This broke a long time ago. You broke it. Rodri, please, I know I failed. I know. But understand me. I felt alone. You were always working. You said it yourself. You neglected me emotionally. I felt invisible. And that's why you decided to see someone secretly? Is that why you lied for over a year? Is that why you got in your lover's car knowing I believed you were somewhere else?" She didn't say anything, just sobbed. "I don't want to justify what I did," she said later. "I just want you to listen to me, to understand me, to help me get out of this. This accident was a punishment from God. I'm sorry, I've understood. It was a wake-up call. I realized everything I lost by looking for something that wasn't worth it. I love you, Rodrigo. I've always loved you, and I think this accident was also a test for you to realize that despite everything we are meant for each other." Those words burst inside me. A test for me? A test of love? That's where I exploded. We argued. I didn't yell, but I raised my voice for the first time in this whole process. I told her everything I had bottled up, how she made me feel like a fool, how she lied to my face, how she used me while she had another. I told her I didn't love her anymore, that I couldn't keep carrying something that she destroyed, that it hurt me more to stay than to leave. She begged me, asked me not to abandon her now, that I stay a little longer, that she could change, that she would do whatever I wanted, that she would go to therapy, that she cut off all contact with Samuel, that she just needed a second chance, and I replied, "Your second chance ended when you chose to lie to me again and again. There's nothing left, Yesenia, just pain." That same night, I called her sister Anna and asked her to take care of her, at least while she figured out how to reorganize her life. Anna agreed, told me she understood, that deep down she knew this was going to happen, that she even admired that I had stayed so long. The next day I left. I grabbed my things and temporarily moved in with a cousin. The divorce is already in process. It hasn't been easy. Every paper I sign feels like closing a chapter with blood, but also with some relief, and yes, I've been asked about Samuel. I haven't seen him, I haven't spoken to him, and I don't plan to. The last thing I heard, because I found out from one of the nurses at the hospital, was that Samuel was discharged quite quickly. Apparently, he recovered better than Yesenia. He's walking, working as if nothing happened. I don't know if he knows that Yesenia has already ratted him out. I don't know if he has the nerve to keep looking for her. But I don't care anymore. It's not my story. My story ended the day I understood that loving doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes loving also means leaving, even if it hurts. Thank you to everyone who read me from day one. Thank you for your messages, for your encouragement, even for your scolding. I don't know what's next for me, but for the first time in a long time I feel free.